What's going on, guys? Austin Zabak here with another YouTube video, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down all of the top questions that I consistently get asked about wholesaling real estate. So if you're brand new to my channel, I'm an active real estate investor. I wholesale anywhere from 25 to 30 properties a month, and I also buy properties to flip, and I'm also buying rental properties and Airbnb properties. Now I just say that so that you take me seriously. I'm not trying to brag or anything like that, and I know for a fact that if I can do all of that, then you for sure can do all of that, because I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the world. So the first question that I always get asked is, Austin, how do I smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm? And it's real simple, honestly. You just go right over here, okay, like right down below the video, and you just smash the like button. It's just like a little thumbs up, and you just smash it. I'm just messing around, okay? The first question that I constantly get asked is, Austin, what is wholesaling? And wholesaling, in a nutshell, to keep it really simple, is just the process of going and getting a property under contract at a below market value price, and then turning around and essentially just selling or assigning that contract to a cash buyer. So you're not ever actually buying the property, okay? You're not closing on the actual property. You're putting it under contract with the seller, and then you're turning around and you're flipping the contract essentially before close of escrow to a cash buyer. So in a nutshell, that's all wholesaling is, and a lot of you probably already knew that, so we're just gonna go ahead and dive in to the rest of the video. The second question that I get asked all the time is, do I need an LLC to wholesale real estate? The simple answer is no. And I want to be very clear, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an attorney, so definitely consult with your lawyer or with your attorney and do not take my advice. I'm just telling you what it is that I know from my perspective, okay? And that is that you do not need an LLC pretty much in any industry. An LLC just protects you legally, but you can absolutely go purchase a property without an LLC in your own personal name. And again, definitely consult with somebody who has more experience when it comes to the law, but from my understanding, having an LLC really just protects you if anything were to go wrong. The third question that I get asked all the time is, Austin, if I do not have access to the MLS, how do I find sellers that are willing to sell below market value? And for those of you guys that don't know what the MLS is, I'll just clarify that really quick. The MLS is the multiple listing service, and that is if you have an active realtor's license. So in a nutshell, if you're not a real estate agent, then you wouldn't have access to the MLS. And the MLS is where real estate agents list properties for sale when they get a listing direct to the seller. And I'll be honest with you, while there are good deals on the MLS, and we do find deals on the MLS consistently every month, there's not as many on the MLS as there are just marketing directly to a seller. Typically by the time they hit the MLS, a bunch of other people have already seen the deal, a bunch of cash buyers have seen the deal, and at that point it overall, in my opinion, just makes the deal a little bit less attractive. Again, that doesn't mean that there aren't deals on the MLS. So to be very clear, you can find deals on the MLS, okay? You typically just need to buy them a little bit below the listing price because the cash buyer wants to feel like they're getting a good deal. So how do you find deals that are not on the MLS if you don't have access to that, okay? And I'm gonna keep it really simple because I'm not gonna lie to you, there are a lot of ways to find deals. The main thing you wanna consider is that when you're talking about finding a deal, what you're really talking about is you're just looking for a property that you can purchase, aka get under contract, below market value. And there's a lot of reasons why a seller would sell a property below market value. So what I encourage you to remember is the actual form of marketing, the method that you use to get in front of the seller, to communicate with them, to make them an offer, it's almost irrelevant. There are some that are better than others, and depending on where you live and the demographic, it will vary, and it's definitely something to kind of look into and to track and maybe even run a split test. But the main thing to keep in mind is that you want to be reaching out to people that have a likelihood, okay, a higher likelihood than normal of selling their property below market value. So what I'm talking about here is having good data. There's a lot of places to get good data, and what I mean by good data is, you can typically actually filter and you can sort through different types of sellers or homeowners. So for example, you could filter through good data and you could look for pre-foreclosures, meaning they defaulted on their mortgage and it is about to go to the auction. You could look for probates where somebody passed away and a family member or somebody inherited a property. You could also look for tax defaults where they defaulted on their taxes, and that's probably a pretty good indication that they can't afford it. There's a lot of ways to do this, but what I would recommend is that you just get good data. data. Now, I'll link a couple of things down below, but one of my favorite places to get data, especially in 2021, is actually called www.topredata.com. And I'll put that right here. That is what I would recommend that you do. Once you filter through all of that data, then how you reach out to them is pretty much entirely up to you. And what I recommend to a lot of people is just giving them a call. Skip trace that data, get their phone number, and just give them a call and just say, hey, my name's Austin. I saw that you owned a property on 123 Main Street, and I was just curious if you'd ever thought about selling. I'm actually a local investor looking to buy another property in the neighborhood. And they're either gonna say yes or they're gonna say no. And if they say yes, then you just pursue that conversation. And there's a couple of other ways to find distressed sellers, and I'm gonna link those things down below as well, such as going and driving for dollars. And one of my favorite places to do that is www.topd4d.com. I'll also put that right here. And that is a really good way also to find distressed sellers. You essentially just get in your car. I mean, it's exactly how it sounds, okay? You download the app using the link that I just gave you, and you just drive around different neighborhoods looking for properties that look a little bit run down. And then again, you go ahead and you give those people a call, you send them a text message, or you send them an email, or again, whatever form of marketing that you want to do. And there's really like probably 100 different ways that you could reach out or get in front of sellers. The fourth question I get asked all the time is, Austin, what do I say to the seller? And I kind of just told you a second ago, okay? But I'll break it down for you a little bit more. And again, you want to keep it really simple. I feel like a lot of people overcomplicate everything in life, right? Whether you're a real estate agent, you're in the insurance industry, you're in Shopify or Amazon, or you work a 9-to-5 job, okay? Whatever it is that you do, you got to remember that you're just having a conversation with another person. So don't overcomplicate it. I mean, for real, you know, if you were to call a homeowner and you were interested in making them an offer on their house, I mean, what would you respond well to if somebody called you? And it's basically what I just said a minute ago. Typically, when I call somebody, I just have a lot of confidence. I give them a call, the phone rings, they pick up, and I say, hey, my name's Austin. Are you blank? Are you John? And they're like, yeah, I'm John. Or I'll just assume that it is John, and I'll say, hey, John, my name's Austin. I saw you owned a property on 123 Main Street. Do you still own that property? They'll say yes. And I'll say, okay, well, I apologize for the random phone call today, but I was just reaching out because I'm a local investor in that neighborhood, and I'm looking to buy another property in cash. And I was just curious if you'd ever thought about selling. In a nutshell, that is what I would say. Now, you can get creative with that. You could change that up a little bit. It just depends on your personality type. But again, you want it to be organic. You always want it to be authentic. No matter what you do, you really want to be an authentic person, right? Because authentic people tend to win in life. I mean, if you're an inauthentic person, then you're probably not going to get very far, right? Because you're always going to sound fake, or you're going to sound like you're trying to manipulate people or something like that. And you're really not doing that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're almost not even a telemarketer because you're calling them to provide a potential solution to a potential problem. You're really not trying to sell them anything at all, are you? I mean, you're actually asking them if they want to sell you their house. So just keep it really simple. And then a lot of people are also, and I'll kind of include this in FAQ number 4, but people are like, Austin, well, what do I say after that? And again, I would just encourage you to ask the questions that you would want to know if you were actually buying their house. I mean, keep it really simple. Wouldn't you want to know how old the roof is, how old the air conditioner is, if they've done any major remodeling in the property, how long they've owned the property, why they're selling the property? I mean, again, you don't want to just ask them like back to back to back to back. You want to have a normal conversation with people. You want to build rapport, right? Building rapport is everything. If you don't have any rapport with somebody, then why in the world would they do any business with you at all? So again, just keep it really simple here, okay? Don't overcomplicate it, and just have a conversation with these people and ask them questions that you would genuinely want to know if you were actually going to buy their property. And I get it, you're wholesaling the property, but you're not going to tell them that, right? They think that you're the buyer. And who knows, maybe you are the buyer. A lot of times we'll end up going into getting a contract on a house, and maybe you do this down the line when you have a little bit more money, but we'll intend on wholesaling it initially, but it ends up being such a good deal that we just buy it for ourselves. So I'm never lying when I tell somebody I'm calling them to buy their house. There's a really good possibility I end up buying their house, and if I don't, then I'm just gonna give it to another cash buyer. So it isn't like they're losing in any of the situations. I mean, it is a total win-win situation. The fifth question that I always get asked is, Austin, how in the world do I know how much money to offer them for their house? And you definitely want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what I'm about to tell you, because at the end of the day, if you offer them a number that a cash buyer is not willing to pay, then you're just kind of wasting everybody's time because you're gonna end up having to cancel on the seller, which you ideally never wanna do. That's why a lot of wholesalers at the end of the day don't have that great of a reputation. So you really wanna make sure that you're offering them the correct and appropriate number for their house to where, you're giving the seller a good enough amount of money to where it ends up being a win for them, but you're also getting it at enough of a discount to where a cash buyer will still be able to make a little bit of money when they go to flip it or when they go to rent it out. So there's a couple of terminologies you're gonna wanna take into consideration, and just go ahead and write them down if you have a notebook or something in front of you, okay? So there's a terminology that I like to call the ARV, and that is the after repair value, and a lot of real estate investors will refer to that. So just make sure you write it down and you remember it. Now, ARV, or after repaired value, essentially just means that what is the property going to be worth when it is all fixed up, in perfect condition, and you go to list it on the market and a brand new buyer goes to buy that property. And this is pretty easy to figure out, okay? You're gonna essentially do what they call comp the house, okay? And that basically just means you're gonna find comparable properties in that vicinity, okay? In that same neighborhood. Ideally, if you have to cross a major road, you can if you have to, okay? But ideally, in the same neighborhood, you're gonna look for other properties that are fully remodeled, that are similar in beds, in baths, in square footage, and year built. And you're gonna take the average of what those properties sold for, and that is going to be your ARV. Now again, I'm just simplifying the crap out of that, okay? I have other videos on my channel talking about that, and if that's a major sticking point for you, then definitely drop into the comments section below and maybe I can make a video on just that. Now, depending on where you live, what you're gonna do next is you're gonna take the ARV and you're gonna multiply that by either 0.5 or 0.7. So you're looking to either make an offer at 50% of ARV or at 70% of ARV or anything in between. And again, it does depend on where you live, and it depends on how much a cash buyer is willing to pay for the property. It also depends on how much work the property needs. So I'll just give you an example just real quick, okay, and then we'll move on. If you have a $100,000 house, meaning it is gonna be worth, when it's all fixed up, okay, the comparable properties in the neighborhood that are really nice, they got brand new carpet, brand new paint, brand new kitchen, brand new bathrooms, the whole thing, it is gonna be worth 100 grand, right? Now let's just say, to be real conservative, we're gonna multiply that by 0.50. You're gonna wanna make an offer on that property for 50 grand or less. That 50 grand number is what they call your MAO, which stands for your maximum allowable offer. And that's another term that I would go ahead and write down if you're taking notes. Now again, you can get a little bit more nitty gritty with this, and you can actually go ahead and figure out how much renovations the property needs, and you can go ahead and do the math that way. You can figure out, whether your back-end buyer is gonna be financing the property, what their holding costs are gonna be, how much profit they wanna make on the property when they're all said and done, how much profit you wanna make on the property for bringing them the deal, and you can kind of reverse engineer it as well to give you like an exact MAO, which is an exact maximum allowable offer. And when you get a little bit better at wholesaling, that's what you'll probably do, right? You'll probably get better. But I would say if you're just starting out, find some cash buyers in your local area. Leverage different Facebook groups and stuff like that. And we'll talk about that more here in just a minute. And ask them, just say, hey, what are you looking to buy properties for in this zip code or in that city or in this region over here? And they'll tell you exactly what they're looking. Just say, hey, if a property's ARV is 250, what are you willing to pay for it? And they'll tell you typically. And now you'll kind of have a pretty good understanding of where you kind of need to make your offer when you're talking to the seller. The next question I get asked all the time is, Austin, how in the world do I find cash buyers? And I'm gonna show you on my computer right here one of my favorite ways to find cash buyers. Now, I will say, just before I jump into this, that there's a lot of ways that you can find cash buyers. I'm only gonna talk about a couple of them because honestly, it isn't too complicated. And if you have a good deal, typically a good deal is not that hard to sell, okay? So just always remember that. If you have a deal that's super difficult to sell, it probably isn't that good of a deal. So let's just go ahead and jump over to it. So you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna obviously get a property under contract, right? Directly with the seller, which would mean that you'd have the address. So for the purpose of the video, I'm just gonna type in a random address here. So I typed in a random address in Tempe, and I'm gonna go ahead and click on the actual property. Again, this is PropStream, okay? www.topredata.com. You get a 7-day free trial when you use that link. I'll also link it in the description below, so definitely go check that out. And there's a lot of things you can do on here aside from obviously finding cash buyers, like we talked about a little while ago. So let's just go ahead and dive right into it. So I pulled up the property here. I'm basically, again, there's a ton of stuff I can do, but right here, it'll actually show me all of the cash purchases that occurred near that property in the last however long you tell it, right? So in the last 6 months, in the last 12 months, last 18 months, whatever it is that you go ahead and you set as your filter. What I'm essentially gonna do is I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna call these cash buyers and I'm gonna say, hey, I saw you bought a property on 123 Main Street a couple months ago and you paid cash for it. I actually have another property in that similar area, in that same area, and I have it below market value, and I was just curious if you wanted another project at this time. And you're very, very likely to sell that property to one of those cash buyers because most likely they're either a flipper or they're a landlord and they're always looking for another good deal. I mean, every real estate investor is always looking for another good deal, right? So if you just call them up with a good deal and you're giving them the property on a silver platter, I mean, come on now. I mean, who isn't gonna take that? So that's one of my most favorite ways to find cash buyers, obviously, and I think you should definitely check that out. And I'm gonna show you one other way, and again, there's a million different ways that you can do this, so just make sure that you keep that in mind, and if that's something that is a major sticking point for you, then definitely also drop in the comment section letting me know, and I'd be happy to make a video on just that. Essentially like how to find cash buyers, okay? So another favorite way of mine is to go on Facebook, and depending on where you live, you just search for local real estate investor Facebook groups in your local area or in that area in which you have that property. So for example, I live in Phoenix, okay? So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna type in Phoenix real estate investors, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna join every single one of those groups, and then I'm gonna go through all of the members of that group, and I'm gonna go ahead and message them on Facebook, and I'm gonna say, hey, I'm a wholesaler, or I have properties that I'm constantly coming across, and I was just curious if you're actively looking for good deals, right? And then you essentially are building your cash buyers list. Another way is just to go ahead and take the property that you have under contract and just go ahead and post it right in one of those particular Facebook groups, okay? So this is a phenomenal way to find cash buyers, and I think you'll be really surprised at basically how simple it is to sell a good deal. Now again, if the deal that you got under contract isn't that good of a deal, it will be a little bit harder to sell, and you're definitely gonna have to get a little bit more creative, okay? And again, there's a lot of other creative ways that you can do this. Another big question I get asked all the time is, Austin, what if I get a deal under contract and I can't end up selling it, okay? I'll say one thing before I go in and kind of dive into what you can actually do if you absolutely cannot end up selling the deal. But one of the things that I would encourage you to do is that if you, for whatever reason, can't find a cash buyer, go ahead and do the same thing we talked about in the last question where we were talking about going on local Facebook groups in that area and reach out to other wholesalers and ask them if they have buyers that would be interested to buy. Because if they have buyers that are interested in that particular area, you can do what they call a co-wholesale deal, which is really simple. It's just where you wholesale it to the wholesaler and the wholesaler wholesales it to the end buyer. Yeah, you might make a little bit less money because now you've got to split the overall amount of money that you were essentially going to make before. But I always like to say that something is always better than nothing, and that is definitely something you want to keep in mind. So that is what I would always recommend before you do that. And I know a lot of people out there that honestly, they just all they do is co-wholesale. They don't do anything else. So essentially, there's people out there, and this can be something to kind of chew on a little bit, okay? And definitely comment down below if you want me to make a video where all I do is talk about this. But there's people out there that don't do any direct to seller marketing, and they're just marketing to other wholesalers in Facebook groups, on Instagram, just taking like wholesalers out to lunch, out to coffee, stuff like that. And basically they're just having all those wholesalers send them their deals, and then they're just selling them to their cash buyers list, or vice versa. So you're only essentially doing half of the equation. You're either building your buyers list and wholesaling other wholesalers deals, or you're just marketing to sellers and letting other wholesalers sell your deals. And that is definitely something that I think in 2021 could be a very viable option for you if you don't want to go and build both sides of the business, because otherwise you're focusing on getting deals and you're also focused on selling the deal, right? You're focused on building a cash buyers list. And sometimes that can be a lot to do in the beginning, right? You might be watching the video and maybe you're already wholesaling. Maybe you're doing a deal a month or 2 deals a month or 3 deals a month. And what I tend to hear a lot when I talk to other wholesalers is that they'll spend a bunch of time and energy getting a property under contract below market value, and then they've got to pivot all of their energy to selling that deal. So that when they end up selling that deal, all of a sudden, their pipeline of like leads and deals has basically just come to a complete stop because while they were focused on selling the deal, they weren't focused on getting their next deal. Another question I get asked all the time is, Austin, where in the world do I get a contract, okay? And this is super simple. I would not overcomplicate it. First and foremost, again, I'm not a lawyer, okay? So technically, I couldn't tell you, okay? But what I will say is this. You know, we live in a day and age where finding information like this is not that complicated. So what I would do is literally just Google how to get a contract, okay? A real estate purchase contract, or how do I get an assignment contract, okay? Or just assignment contract, assignment real estate contract on Google, or purchase contract for the seller, okay? There's a lot of ways you can do that. You can also, depending on where you live, again, consult with an attorney, consult with a lawyer, consult with a realtor, but typically you can even use a realtor contract, even if you're not a realtor, okay? Again, consult with a realtor on that in your local area. That is something that you could potentially do. Again, keep it really simple. I know there's even things like Rocket Lawyer and stuff like that where I think you can just like pay them to sell you a lot of this stuff. It's super cheap, relatively inexpensive at the end of the day. And, you know, again, don't get hung up on that, right? I feel like a lot of people, they get hung up on the little things. And, you know, they'll constantly tell themselves why they can't do something because the little things, they're constantly getting in their way. Don't be one of those people, right? If you want to get into the industry, get into the industry. You know, if you want to start a YouTube channel, start a YouTube channel. Doesn't mean you have to have the perfect lighting and the perfect camera and the perfect audio and the perfect everything day one, right? You've got to start, okay? And then eventually you can become great, right? But you have to start, okay? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, okay? So don't overcomplicate it. You can Google a lot of this stuff and definitely don't spend a ton of time and energy thinking about it. Another big question I get is, should I tell the seller that it isn't gonna be me buying the property? Or should I tell the seller that I'm a wholesaler? Okay, look, I wouldn't tell you to do that, okay? Here's what I would do. I would be very confident in your ability to wholesale the house. The biggest thing is you don't want to leave a seller high and dry. You don't want to commit to them and say, hey, I'm buying your house, right? And not tell them you're a wholesaler or anything like that, and then not be able to actually sell the deal. And maybe they go and they put a down payment on another house, or you know, they figure out their life plan, or they get a moving company all scheduled, and all of a sudden, you know, 8 or 9 or 10 days later, you're canceling on the contract, okay? So look, you wanna be moral, you always wanna be ethical, right? And that is my biggest thing. Again, be authentic, be moral, be ethical. You're not here to take advantage of people, right? You're here to solve a problem, okay? And you're here to solve a problem for not only the seller, but the end buyer. You know, a lot of these cash buyers, a lot of these flippers, the landlords out there, you know, they don't want to spend their time and energy finding the deal. They just want to flip the deal, right? They just want to collect the cash flow on the deal. So you really are solving a big problem. Again, I would just tell you that if you're not going to tell the seller, okay, which you probably shouldn't, okay, if you're not going to tell the seller that you're a wholesaler or whatever the case is, you know, be confident in the number, be confident that you can find a buyer, and make sure to do your due diligence in the beginning. I'm going to kind of tie this into the last one we just talked about, so I don't know if I'm going to make this a separate FAQ question. A lot of people are like, Austin, like legit, like what do I do if I actually can't sell the property, right? Because you put your earnest money down of $100 or $500 or $1,000 or whatever, and you don't want to lose your earnest money, and maybe you're not capable of actually buying the property, okay? If that's the case, you should always have it getting your contract, talk to a lawyer, okay, talk to an attorney, but you should always have what they call an inspection period or due diligence period, in which time you can cancel the contract for any reason whatsoever per your discretion and get your earnest money back. Now again, as a buyer, a worst case scenario, you cancel you know, later on down the line and you don't get your earnest money back, okay? That is your biggest risk, right? When wholesaling. Again, you've got to talk to somebody in the legal industry, right? But your biggest risk is essentially losing your earnest money, okay? You don't have to perform, but again, be moral, be ethical, okay? You don't want to ruin the industry for a lot of other wholesalers out there. This is truly an industry that I believe in 2021, you can make a ton of money in this industry. You could even do it as a side hustle. You could do it as you know, something you just kind of do on the side, and you could do maybe a deal a month or 2 deals a month and make an extra $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, okay, or whatever the case is. So I do believe there's a ton of money to be made here, and I believe in 2021 and beyond, there'll be even more money to be made. real estate is an industry that will always be around. People are always gonna need a place to live. Whether the market is up, whether the market is down, whether the market is diagonal, left, right, or sideways, okay? People have to live, and houses are always getting older. New houses are always getting built. The houses that are getting built today and 10 years from now, they're gonna need to be renovated, right? Because there's always a new trend, there's a new style. People beat their house up, the carpets get dirty, the paint gets nasty and gross, and the whole freaking ball of wax, okay? So again, I love the industry. I hope you will fall in love with the industry as much as I have. And I really hope that some of those questions helped you in some way, shape, or form. So if you could just do me a huge favor, if you're still watching to the end of the video, please drop a comment, okay? If you're watching right now, please do me a favor and drop a comment and let me know that you stayed to the very end. I would love to know how many of you stayed to the very end of the video, and just smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Again, I'm gonna link everything down below, so do me a favor and go check all of that out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out our podcast, okay? It's a brand new podcast of ours where we interview cool people all around the world. We talk about life, business, money, and every now and then I give a little bit of relationship advice, okay? So definitely go check that out. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.